The Gini coefficient, the difference between the rich and the poor in a country, is something that gets brought up all the time. And people always focus on the rich, and they say, well, you know, if we could just get more money out of them. But is it realistic? And you've written so much about money. There's so many things I want to ask you, but let's start here. Is it realistic for countries to think they can just tax the rich into prosperity for the poor?
The rich don't pay taxes, for number one. You know, Trump is my good friend. I know people hate the man. But when he was he was in the campaign against Hillary Clinton, he was a real crook. But anyway, Hillary says, but you don't pay taxes. And Trump says, that's because I'm smart. So historically, in 1773, America had a revolution against the British. It was called the Boston Tea Party.
That's right. It was over some tea.
Yeah, so America was taxed. America has been a tax-free nation for years. And then this guy here, Marx, I went to military school, we had to study Marx.
Yeah.
He encourages taxes. So if you support taxes, you're a Marxist.
And we know how well that goes for countries. God. Yeah, right. Okay, so let's just go back a little bit in time, because your book has done so well all over the world. Why is it that some people seem to develop a good relationship with money and other people do not?
It's a tough question you just asked. But one of the reasons I asked Sandy to come with me, when you start with investing in money, I'm what's called fundamentals, income statement, balance sheet, statements of cash flow, and all this. Sandy is technical investor. He's technical, I'm fundamental. But why I don't cringe is because the next crash coming, guys like he and I get rich.
All right.
Is that correct, Sandy?
Yeah, it's correct. I mean, it's a good question. Like, why does it work for some and not for others? And I've always said it's like going to a coffee shop and asking for a coffee. Can I have a coffee? Well, what do you want? Espresso, double espresso, cappuccino, latte. So first of all, find out what it is that you want. Like Robert said, he's a fundamental side, mine's technical side. I look at pictures. Robert's side is more numbers. So for some people, they actually don't know that. They've been trained to think, just look at numbers, when actually you can just look at pictures. And one thing about not just the South African economy.
When you say pictures, you mean graphs and charts?
I'm going to go into that.
Charts.
For some people, they look at the economy and they're just looking at the South African economy, but it's all interrelated, but it's interrelated to the US dollar, right? So what we can do is to look at charts, and the charts simply give us 4 pieces of information, just 4, open, close, high, and low. And with that information, we can create patterns.
He and I will get richer when it crashes. That's investing. You see, when people are afraid, that's when they panic. Or when prices are going up, they get excited. We don't care if it's going up or down. That's a pure capitalist. So when this crashes, like you're expecting a crash now.
Yeah,
right?
so what we're seeing right now in terms of going back to that picture theory, the chart theory, markets very often historically, you go back to the early 1800s, you'll see markets move in patterns of 3s and 5s. And this is really interesting. Right now, the US markets, which is the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, are now completing the 5th wave pattern. So what it's suggesting is that there is a big decline ahead. But we're also, interestingly, and Robert and I were having this conversation, is that we're seeing real estate prices rising, stock markets rising, bonds rising, the US dollar rising, and we've got also Bitcoin, the digital currencies, on the rise. So what happens if it all starts going down? Where's the safest place to put your money? And that's why education is absolutely critical.
But we actually get richer when it crashes.
I know, you told me that now twice. I'm starting to worry.
Yeah, but that's real financial education.
So Sandy and Robert, I mean, when people are worried about where to put their money, and many people have been, and we've seen some ups and downs over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of talk about gold, about Bitcoin, about stocks, about raw materials. We're in a country where people don't even have that much money to invest. Most people are living hand to mouth. What would you advise people who have even a little bit of money to do with that in uncertain times like these?
I'll start by saying that not everybody understands Bitcoin. but most people understand gold. So you can, if anybody in South Africa had just been purchasing small ounces of gold, has the value of money risen, or has the value and the price of gold risen?
The latter.
So why not start there?
Yeah, right. And I mean, for you, Robert, when you wrote that book all those years ago now, all of those things still ring true.
Absolutely. I wrote it because I'm so concerned about this gap between rich and poor. And like that's what I keep saying to people. The U.S. is the next Zimbabwe. When the U.S. goes down, the world's going to come apart. So that's why as we're talking, you have the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
Yeah.
The world's coming after the U.S.
Yeah.
I find it a very interesting time personally. And most people are kind of fat, dumb, and happy. Well, I have a house, my stock market's up. But I think chaos is about to start. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, as I said, we're in this, in terms of the markets, we're in this fifth wave. And that could take a few months to a few years. It depends on your own personal horizon. What I'm seeing this year, there's 45 elections around the world. So all at the same time, pretty much. The markets, in my view, are just going to be rigged and just propped up. So once that's out of the way, what other good news is left? And so then fear starts to set in. Don't forget, it's not just the markets that are up, and like I said earlier on real estate. What else is up? Inflation.
Yeah.
And
well,
printing money is absolutely killing wealth. And that's why when Robert said, you know, the whole concept of why America should fall is think about how many countries' currencies are pegged with the US dollar.
But I want to ask you about that for a second. You mentioned Trump just now, and Joe Biden is going around telling everybody that the economy's fine and employment numbers are up and inflation's not that much of an issue. I mean, it sounds very tone deaf to a lot of us, especially because he's the guy who printed trillions of dollars. This is a recipe for disaster. Does he not understand where inflation comes from? Has he not got anybody with a brain in the White House to help him figure this out?
I think Biden is the worst president we've ever had. The man is a criminal. You know, there's a saying that you think tough leaders are bad, just see what the damage a weak leader can do. And Biden is the weakest we've ever had. His first job, his first day one, was to cut the Keystone pipeline between Canada and America. He cut that. I'm an oil guy. I have oil stock, oil wells. So I was under Trump, my friend, we were selling oil at $30 a barrel. When Biden came to office, oil went to $130 a barrel. I knew exactly what that criminal's doing. He's going to sabotage the poor and middle class. Next step, revolt. The gap between rich and poor is accelerating under Biden.
And I heard just this week he's opening up the northeast oil reserves to try northwest oil reserves to try
gas reserves.
So he's trying to pump that into the system to just try and reduce the price of gas for people at the petrol station.
That man's a criminal, okay? No, he cut the Keystone XL pipeline. America under Trump was a oil-rich nation. But when he cut that off, then the price of oil went up. And then so what Biden did, he drained the strategic oil reserve.
Right.
Now he's draining the strategic gas reserves. He's making us bankrupt. Biden is a criminal. Look at his son, Hunter. You know, the FBI can't find his laptop? Give me a break. Give me a break.
No, I'm in complete agreement with you on all of that. Even though in America,
isn't it?
But in America, it's still contentious stuff. Do you think that Biden had a rich dad, poor dad situation, or just a poor dad situation?
In a criminal situation, as far as I'm concerned.
There should be a third book: a rich dad, poor dad, crooked dad. All right. Well, I'm concerned because where America catches a sneeze, the rest of us die of a cold.
Amen.
So we've got to worry about this. When you look at things that have happened in the markets since you wrote this book, and in your case, Sandy, since you advise people all the time on what to do with their investments, and you look at what the market movements are, do these things come suddenly? Like we always hear stories about Great Depression and how people were jumping out of buildings because they lost everything, or do they creep upon you and you don't even know until it's too late?
For me, what I look at is charts all the time, and it's sometimes it all scream out patterns. What you've seen over history is that the peak of human emotions, everybody's bullish at the top, so everybody thinks everything's okay. I just want to go back a second to something that you said. Does Washington know that there is an economic crisis? The people to ask are the general public. Are things expensive right now?
Yep.
Are you able to have enough money at the end of the month that you're not having to think about what to spend on? And if you go around the world and people will tell you, no, the cost of food has gone up, the cost of fuel has gone up, and the cost of starting and running businesses have gone up. But has wages kept up with inflation? No, nowhere. So that in itself is a crisis. So it's not that it's creeping up, it's been happening for a long time. But once that market crashes, it will crash in 3 waves. So the first wave is a shock. The second wave is when they think it's actually not that bad. And then the third wave comes in. And that's when everybody panics. But you should be stepping in to buy at lower prices. So again, it comes down to education, learning how to recognize the patterns. It's not about creeping up. It's about recognizing the patterns.
Well, there's an old Buffett line about when everybody's greedy, be
fearful.
Fearful, and when others are fearful, be greedy. Right? Yeah.
So.